What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Digger Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Walsh, and today we got an awesome episode. We're going to dive into all things first step. You know, that's such an important part of the game. It's a common question that we get. How do I improve my son or daughter's first step? Whether it be coaches talking about their players, parents talking about their kids, there's always a question. How do I improve? How do I improve my first step? How do I improve my first step? And there's a lot of different layers to that, from a scientific side, from a psychological side, and just a strategic side. So first and foremost, when we're talking about first step, like we got to bring context to what first step is, all right? And for those of you listening and not watching the video, first step is literally what it sounds like. Balls hit. How does your player react, all right? It's a reactive environment from the athlete to the external environment, which in this case is a baseball or a softball being hit in infield. Okay. So for us, when we talk about infield play, we also got to understand, like, in between the ears, what's going on with the infielder. Okay. Do they understand the situation at hand? Do they understand what's going on with the scoreboard, the runners, the field, the surface that they're playing at? Where are they going to go with the ball next? Pre-pitch, understanding balls hit to you, or balls hitting a certain grid on the field, where are you going with the ball? All right, just make sure we have that in order before we start to unravel all this first step stuff, because if we have a million things going on in between the ears, right, we're overthinking things, that's going to cause paralysis. And then it hinders our ability to react to the game, okay? So we might as well not even talk about first step if you don't understand what is going on within the game. All right. So that's more in between the ears, okay? And then when we start talking about first step, there's several of them, because there's several different types of ground balls that are going to be hit to the infielders within the field at different positions, okay? So first step needs to be contextual to where is the ball on the field, okay? So with our infielders, we're always constantly, especially early on, talking about getting into good positions. Like level 3 for us is standing straight up. Level 2 is a good athletic position. Level 1 is our fielding position, just to bring context to moving in posture and what good versus poor posture is. If I have an infielder moving at level 3 constantly, well, I'm going to address that for several different reasons, because we don't move well playing too tall. We don't field baseball, softball as well playing too tall. We don't move explosively from a static position tall. So bring context with your infielders to understand, hey, you're really tall at level 3 right now. There's no way you're going to maximize your lower half output. There's no way you're going to be able to create good lines of push for your first step. So levels, level 3 standing, level 2 is where we move. Level 2, if you just think about a good athletic position, if you think about like a linebacker, you're in a good position to go range, okay? And that's very important with your first step. It's very important for infield play. And then level 1, that's our fielding zone, okay? And we've gotten into that in previous episodes, so go check that out. All right, so that's posture, okay? And then we teach our athletes how to move in and out of those postures. And at the very rudimentary level, that's just level change, right? So that's squat. A squat is a form of a level change vertically, okay? Pretty similar to baseball, but it's not a squat entirely, okay? There's a quad and a hip component that have to have a good balance, okay? And then we have lunge. We have to be able to level change via lunge positions, okay? That's very, has a lot of crossover into a backhand or forehand. So we got to have the ability to lower our center of mass by way of 2 feet on the ground, right, outside of our shoulders, and then a lunge in a split position. And then we just want to make sure our infielders understand a hip hinge, which is just their ability to load their hips versus their lower back, okay? Their ability to load their lower half or their hips without compromising the integrity of their spine. This also helps us propel center of mass forward, which is our game. We don't move up so much, okay? Like obviously there's hip extension when we start from the ground up. You have to get taller. We move up, sure, but we're usually moving through, right? Like towards our target. So it's not so much a vertical component, like if you're gonna just envision someone sitting the standing, that's vertical, okay? That's more basketball. That's more jumping to go get a rebound. We need some of that expression, some of that power, but it's not necessarily our sport, what it's made of. That's why we train a lot of horizontal side to side, because that's just more specific to infield play. Okay. First step. When we talk about first step with our athletes, we always start with linear. Linear, if you could just think of a straight line from A to B, that's what linear, straight line. And our game is very angular and 45 degree and yada, yada, yada. But there are balls that are hit straight down, right? We see the ball hit the bat, and then we have to escape the position we're in. And the position we're in is hopefully a good level 2 athletic tunnel. We have to escape that position and go arrive at a new position, aka the ball. So pre-pitch, we start with our setup, right? We'll start with our setup, and then we'll move through 4 different first step types: linear, angular, lateral, and a hip reposition. So let's start with our setup. What does a good pre-pitch setup look like outside of timing? So for us, it starts to get back to the level 2. Like, you're going to be in a good athletic position, right? Your feet are going to be outside of your shoulders, okay? They're not going to be underneath your hips width. They're not going to be shoulder width. They're going to be outside of your shoulders. And this is such an important part for infielders, because as we get into this conversation of first step and where we need to go depending upon what the game's telling us, is we need to be able to push right, push left, right? Reactively. We don't know until the ball's hit. Eyes tell your body to start to organize where our direction is going to be. But if you're a little too narrow, you're either A, going to widen out and then push, or you're just not going to push at all, and your shoulders are going to go behind your hips, and you're going to play tall, and you're going to drastically decrease your ability to range, okay? So your setup with your feet width-wise should be outside of your shoulders. Now, there's no exact science, because every infielder is different heights and different limb lengths and yada, 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 but for the visual of have a nice wide base to not only allow you to push right, left, forward, back, side to side, but get engaged into that lower half. Got it? So your feet are going to set up outside the shoulders. And then we have to have good contact with the earth, okay? You see a lot of infielders on their toes, like, because they've heard be on your toes, be on your toes. And I understand what the coaches are saying, just be loose, reactive, and light, not heavy-footed, but also we don't want to be on our toes. If you ever go over to an infielder and all their weight's on their toes, it's not that hard to push them off their center of mass. They don't have it, right? They're not going to be powerful there. So if you think about the bottom of your shoes, if you ever looked underneath, we need a good part of that surface area in contact with the earth, all right? That allows you leverage to push the ground wherever the game tells you need to, all right? So a nice wide base, you want a good amount. You want your whole foot to be on the ground, but the pressure, which is the part that separates it, should be in the middle of your foot, right? It shouldn't be on your toes. It shouldn't be on your heels. Both of those places, we're not going to be successful. So we want pressure in the middle of our feet, all right? That allows us to be agile, explosive, tap into some stored elastic energy. Okay, that's our feet setup, where we set our feet up, all right? And then, okay, moving up the kinetic chain, our knees. If you just think about like little dots at these checkpoints or these joints, just to get a better visual. So we're going feet, we're going up our shins, right to our knees. What should our knees look like? How should they be set up? If I'm looking at you from the side profile, we want your both knees to move over the middle of your foot, right? So if they were straight up, we'd want them to start to move and track over the middle of your foot, for reasons being, this allows you to start what we call dorsiflexion. It creates dorsiflexion of your ankles, which allows a tremendous amount of power for us to tap into through stored elastic energy of your Achilles tendon, all right, of your ankle complex. It's almost like a loaded gun. When you take that knee and you move it over the middle of your foot, you should feel a stretch in your calf. That's potential power to, again, allow us go from a static position to accelerate and range and produce force, okay? Now, there is a mobility limitation to this, okay? If you have an infielder and they go to do what I just said and move their knees over the middle of their foot and their heel comes off the ground right away, well, they lack dorsiflexion. They don't have that range of motion, whether it be because of tissue and their calves are too tight, or there's actually bony mechanical structures that are kind of grinding on one another, prohibiting them to get their knees over the middle of their foot, okay? And then you got to either Google it, YouTube or go to a strength coach to figure out how to mobilize your ankles to increase dorsiflexion. Okay, that allows us not only stored energy and loading the ankle joint, but that sets up good lines of push again if I'm going straight or right to left, or I have to reposition. Okay, so those are our knees. We don't want those knees to be outside our ankles. All right, that's just going to lose inside part of your foot. And it's just, again, taken away from the leverage and ability you have to produce force. Acceleration is force production. All right, we got to figure out how to go from a static position to create a lot of force quickly. All right, so these are some things that are just, if you could do a good job at them, you're setting yourself up for success to get out of that static position. So now moving up to our hips. All right, so your knees are going forward, your hips are going back. So your knees go forward over the middle of your feet and your hips go back, the opposite of what your knees do, to start to create balance, a segmentation of center of mass, and also potential power. Once our hips go down and back and reach not so much down towards the earth, but more so just kind of a little bit on an angular down underneath our hips, our waistline, right, to start to load tension in our hips and hamstrings. Again, we need that. We need our body is a human rubber band if we can organize it accordingly. All right, so that's our hips. Load the hips down and back, and our shoulders. Or I'm sorry, our spine. Our spine should be neutral or flat. All right, we shouldn't have that much round or curvature in our spine. That's just going to limit your ability to transfer force from the ground up, and it's just going to act as a braking force, which we do not want here. Okay, so then moving on up the kinetic chain to our shoulders. Our shoulders, so our hips went back, our spine's neutral, our shoulders should be forward, probably stacked over your knees. All right, that's a pretty just basic athletic position to be, because that our shoulders forward helps our hips to go back. In theory, if we're doing a good job with a nice core, stable core, right, and a neutral spine. If we get into that good position, awesome. Moving on, right, good pre-pitch starting position. Now we got to figure out what tool to use. All right, we got 4 or 5 different tools to use depending on where that ball is hit. So let's start with linear. Back to our straight line, A to B. Okay, so balls hit straight down, hits the earth. We got to go escape our position and go close the gap. All right, once we see ball down, that should be an innate learned habit to go attack that ball. All right, and obviously, if I'm at shortstop, ball hits straight at me, we're working right to left. But a big thing that we've heard in the past from coaches is like, so say if you can visualize, I have an infielder on the third base line. Okay, they have both feet on the third base line. All right, and I told them to run straight ahead on my clap. So all they had to do is run straight ahead on my clap as fast as they can. Boom. I clap. If you watch their first movement, 9 out of 10 times, I'll argue 10 out of 10, a right or a left foot is going to go behind their hips. Okay, so a right or a left foot, whichever foot they're dominant with, is going to go behind their hips, and then they're going to go forward. All right, we call this a plyo or a reposition step, a plyometric step. And a lot of coaches, I understand why they said it. Why would I want to go backwards to go forwards? Well, when you start to figure out acceleration, angles, propulsion angles, ground force reaction, well, we alluded to earlier that we don't play a vertical game, right? We don't jump straight up. We go out. So we have to start to organize our limbs to allow us to project out. And that is how we start to get this force generation in the desired direction, propulsion angles out. So boom, I'm here, I see ball down. For me, my right foot goes behind my pelvis. I'm a right foot dominant person. I don't think about this. My body my central nervous system just organizes it, okay? So boom, my foot goes behind my hip, because if I need my hips, my pelvis to go forward, I need to push the earth away from me. So as I'm going forward, my first push is behind my body. And now that starts to build up force going straight ahead. Okay. And then as my foot goes behind, my shoulders start to lean forward, because again, if you think about, if I'm holding a pencil straight up, I'm going to create force going straight up. This is a pen. right? Or if I start to tilt it and let it fall to a 45-degree angle, that's where our game is played, forward, side to side. So we need to start to create our joints and limbs accordingly to where we need to go. Okay, so boom, first step, a foot goes behind my pelvis, all right, and I start to get aggressive into the earth to push my center of mass forward. All right, that's such an important part. And then from the waist down, it's very aggressive, right? You're really trying to use the earth as a trampoline because as soon as the harder you push into the earth, all right, the more energy the earth gives back right away. If you ever been to like a festival or a carnival and you saw that dude who is just boom, he takes this little hammer or a mallet type thing and slams on this whatever, that rubber piece, and a number shoots up on how hard that mallet hit that piece or whatever it is. Well, that's kind of how it is on our first step. The more force we put into the ground, well, the more we're going to get out by way of acceleration, okay? So that's a good thing, and we're definitely going to strive for that. Moving up through the kinetic chain, this is where that neutral spine's got to stay. If I start to round my shoulders, it's going to be tougher for my hips to get through. And then once you round or your spine starts to move around, you'll dissipate energy that you just got from the ground, from pushing the ground, okay? So from as far as like our running actions, as soon as we see ball down A to B, we have to have loud limbs, all right? Separation of our limbs. If we stay, you see those runners where they move with their gloves right by their hips the entire time, there's no arm action, all right? And our arms are connected to our body, guys. So we might as well use them. They create a lot of force and acceleration and power through the kinetic chain, and they help maximize the power of our hips. Let's use them. Let's be aggressive in pursuit on a ball hit straight down where we got to go close the gap, okay? So that's linear, ball hit straight down, get a foot behind your pelvis. Obviously, if the ball is hit straight at you, you do want to clear your left eye to get information, shape, and speed. And then as we start to organize our right-left catch, we're on the run. All right, so that's linear, that's A to B. Now we're going to start to talk about angular. So again, we'll talk like I'm at shortstop, ball's not hit straight at me anymore. I'm sorry, we're on the angular first step. So now this is where, because of the specificity of our sport, where balls hit at us, and we have to start to create momentum around and through the ball, because our destination, if I'm at short on a routine ground ball, no outs, is glove side to my left, all right? So the sport asks me to work right to left. I can't run straight at the ball. Well, I can. We don't want to run straight at the ball and then stop our feet and then try and redirect momentum to our left. Create it pre-fielding to allow us to create rhythm, timing, momentum. So for the angular first step, this is where we get into a little more of direction and propulsion angles, steering wheels. So it's similar to the linear acceleration. It's just the direction changes a little bit. So how we organize this is going to differ in that my right foot doesn't just go straight behind my hips to go straight forward. Say the ball is hit a little bit off my right hip, okay? It's hit off my right hip on the ground. If you were to draw a straight line from home plate to my right hip, that's the path the ball will travel, all right? As soon as I identify that with my eyes and I'm relaxed in between my ears, I could start to organize an angular first step, which means my engine now becomes my left hip, because I have to go to my right side, right, off my right hip to get around that ball and work back towards first. My first initial push is going to be left foot goes behind my left pelvis, and I push the earth down and back to allow my center of mass to propel in the direction I want to go. All right, so my backside hip pushes the earth away. I got a good setup of my feet. My knees are over my midfoot, and now I start to extend my hip and push the ground away. My front hip is more the steering wheel, right? So like my back hip's the engine, all right? And I want to make sure that power gets through to the right pathway, and that's where my front hip opens, all right? So like, boom, my back hip pushes. Now my right toe starts to organize where I want that energy to go, okay? So it's like a push open in the desired direction, but we're still going forward, right? We're going forward. It's just a little more angular because of the ball that is hit, right? We want to organize that accordingly. Lateral first step, okay? So think about this: ball's that are hit medium pace, maybe hard. We have to range east and west, right and left. Okay. And, movement wise in general, we have a couple different options there. Like you got shuffles, you got crossovers. For us, and, a mentor of mine is Lee Taft. Okay. Lee Taft is one of the world's best speed and agility coaches, change of direction coaches out there. If you want more information, go check his page out, check his content out. He's absolutely amazing. So what Lee Taft talks about is he calls for the lateral first step. So boom, I land in my pre-pitch position. I hope I'm on time. We see the ball hit to my right. We'll say the ball is hit to my right. Okay, I'm at shortstop. It's hitting the 5-5 hole. It's hit well. Now, Lee Taft calls it pop. P-O-P. All right, and that's just a lateral crossover, push, open, push. Again, if I identify that ball is hit to my right, my back hip, which is my left hip in this context, is my engine. All right, so I push the earth down and back, which starts to translate my center of mass to my right. Okay, so first hip, first push, left hip pushes the earth down and back, internally rotate my left hip. All right, and I want a little more pressure on the inside part of my left foot to get down and back. And then as soon as I push, I want my front side hip to serve as a steering wheel and open, which is externally rotate, the opposite action reaction of what my left hip did. So push, I open. Now, as my center of mass is traveling, my right hip now becomes my push, right? So now I have a loaded gun and I push the earth down and back again, and I get into a lateral run. So it all starts with that first push, which is a buildup of force and momentum, and then it has to translate into a run or a breakout. And then we have to organize whatever fielding position that is. It's probably going to be a backhand, obviously, if I'm going to my right. So, I mean, the first step is everything, all right? You can sit there and be like, oh, he wasn't going to get there anyway, right? But I disagree. I think this is such a big part of infield play that doesn't get taught. And there's a lot left on the table if we don't address this, okay? So a ball hit to my right, push, open, push. Back hip pushes, front hip opens. Okay, backside pushes, front hip opens, and then my front hip becomes my second push. That's the last second P, P-O-P, push, open, push. And then as I'm ranging, guys, you see too many infielders start to break out and their chest moves with their hips, and now they're struggling for their eyes to see the game. Have a little bit of shoulder hip separation so your eyes could track the speed and shape of that ball so you can figure out how to organize what type of on the run backhand fielding mechanics you are best served to use. All right, so that's a side to side. That's like a lateral crossover. Balls hit well to my right or left. We got a range. Okay, and that push open push is very similar to our steel break, right? Backside hip push, front side hip open, center of mass travels out in front of your front hip, and then it's like a piston on a train, pushing the earth down and back. The last one we're going to talk about today, as far as first step, and you think about an X, right? So say I'm at shortstop, guys, and you have a drone 10 feet over my big head, right? There's a massive X that you see, and I'm in the center of that X. So now I got front right, front left, back right, back left, okay? Obviously, we have a side to side, which we just spoke about, lateral. So if you just drew a straight line, but now we're going to talk about off my back right and back left hip. So this is in a situation where balls hit well off my right or left hip, and I need to create space, okay? Or outfielder, ball hit over right or left shoulder. Now we have to, a lot of people call it a drop step. I think we're getting around to the hip reposition. Drop step's cool. I just think, while it sets a good angle, I don't think it's as athletic as a hip reposition. If you could think about a hip reposition, if I say you were to throw a ball over my left shoulder, all right? It's going glove side. You're going to throw the ball over my left shoulder. How this happens, it's the same premise of, ground force, a push, open, push. It's just in a different direction. So now if I see the ball over my left shoulder, I'm going to now take my my right foot, I'm going to bring it in front of my body, like right, I'm going to bring it forward as my left hip starts to open, right? So I'm going to get my right foot in front of my center of mass because I need to go back. We talked about how your feet around your hips are so important in setting good lines of push and angles. So now it's just specific to where the game's telling me I need to go. Over my left shoulder, right foot goes forward, my eyes are tracking, and now I open up my left hip and I push open, and then I'm going to track. And how aggressive, where that ball is in flight, if I have the range, is going to determine how aggressive I have to be. Now, in infield play, balls hit right or left, we need the drop step to create angles that allow our eyes to track, and then also just for us to intersect the ball. So a hip reposition step is super dynamic and athletic. That's why I like it. Drop steps do play on maybe different types of hop balls. Like think about like a line drive hop where it's just a drop step, right? Then we got to reposition our feet anyway, or replace our feet to get back in line to wherever the ball is going next. So those are just 4 first steps. And we didn't dive deep into timing, all right? I mentioned you got to be on time. For us, timing is just as that ball is entering the hitting zone, just be on the middle of your feet, right? Like almost like a little hop. And then we like to go a little hop as it's like plyometric in nature. And you start to tap into that stretch shortening cycle. If you just think about a rubber band being pulled apart, you let go, there's a lot of power and energy stored in there. So it's a derivative of that. So we like to talk with our infielders, hey, be a level 2, attack position, attack mode, clear in between your ears before our pre-pitch, and react. Okay, so we like to be on time, ready to play offense when that ball is entering the hitting zone, because the hitting zone is the same from Little League to MLB. It's in the same position and may get larger vertically, but it can't miss there. It's not going to change. Whereas people like to creep right, left, right, and then they don't hop, and we're very pattern-oriented beings and movers. So once you start to manipulate how you approach right, left, or left, right, that's going to alter your next step. And if it's not in the direction where that ball is hit, it's just going to cause you to play behind the game, play defense. And that's not what we're trying to do here. So, hey, that's just a little round table conversation on first step. We have a lot of stuff on our F.A.S.T development on our Instagram. If you want to check that out on first step, if you have more questions about this, please reach out. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been amazing. You guys have done a great job with feedback and giving us questions that help us help you. All right, that's what we got for today. First step, super important, whether you're going to be a lead or not. And I think everyone needs to start to develop those skills. You have a good rest of your day. We'll see you next time.